Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions. 540-0580, 540-0580. Just a little side note, we will not be answering any questions about boating under the influence today. I spent about an hour this morning in the goose blind answering all kinds of questions about boating under the influence, which led me to believe that the guys I was goose hunting with seem to have a particular concern about the law as it surrounds drinking in boats. I don't know what that tells me about them, but I'm just kind of glad we were on dry land based on all those boating questions I was getting. 540-0580. You have a legal question, a legal concern, call in. We'll answer it here on the air. I was on the Durgan show recently. Probably if you want to follow up on anything you heard me say there, I'd be happy to do that as well. Bob had me on to talk about a guy who, and this plays right into our discussion, these animal rights people fly a helicopter, not just one of those toy helicopters, but an $8,000 helicopter over somebody else's farm. By the way, you want to call them with your legal question, it's 540-0580. They fly this helicopter up over somebody else's farm where there's supposedly an illegal pigeon shoot taking place. And I'm not going to get into the politics of pigeon shoots and animal rights activists, but that's the setup. At some point, their helicopter crash lands in a tree, and they can't retrieve it because the landowner won't let them on the land. And, of course, they call the state police. It's a great little legal dilemma because here's the thing. They own the helicopter, and they have the right to get it back. I mean, it should be returned to them. That said, the person who has to return it to them is the person who gets it in their hands. And that's the idea that if somebody mislays or has lost property, you have a duty to return it to them. And so if you're walking down the street and you see that your neighbor left their lawnmower out in the lawn, you can't just assume they've abandoned it and take it. Also, if they've left their lawnmower in another lawn or just down the street somewhere, and maybe you're not even sure whose lawnmower it is, you still have a duty to try to return it to the owner and take it to local law enforcement so in case anybody claims it. Then after a period of time, if nobody claims it, it becomes yours, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the rub in the case I'm telling you about. The helicopter is stuck in a tree, and the landowner's not saying, landowner's saying, I don't have it in my possession. I've never picked it up. I've never touched it. I haven't really put it in my hands yet. So I don't have a duty to take it to anybody or return it to anybody. But by the way, you can't come on my property. And each side has a property right, and neither one really trumps the other. I don't think that the owner of the land has to allow anybody to come on to retrieve something that's stuck in a tree that belongs to somebody else. And this happens all the time in the wildlife field when a deer, for instance, runs into some neighboring property. Even if you shot it and watch it fall over dead, you can't cross the posted line without the posted owner's permission. And at that point, you've got to get the law involved. So I think that was just very interesting because you have a property right and you have a different property. There's one in land and one in chattel, and each side asserts their right. But as long as that guy doesn't climb the tree and touch the helicopter, I don't think he has to assist the other guy in getting it back, and he doesn't have to give him permission to come on his land. Tom, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. How are you, Tom?
Oh, very well, thank you. I got a question. There's a local fitness center here. It has a room reserved for seniors and women.
Okay.
And I say that discriminates against the young men who are not permitted to use that room, in that those that are privileged to use it don't pay a premium in their membership fee, nor do the young men get a discount for being prohibited from using it.
Right.
So I say that's discrimination, and they can't do that legally.
Well, you can discriminate. I mean, discrimination is legal. Let's start with that proposition. Unless you discriminate against somebody on a basis that's considered protected without a justifiable reason to do so. And it has to be more than just a little bit of justification. It's a lot of justification. So what you're saying is that this fitness center has a room where who can go in there? Just women?
Women and seniors. And the seniors are prohibited on weekends and after 4 on weekdays.
Huh. That is interesting. Is this a public entity or is this a private club?
Well, I guess it's private since you have to pay to get a membership.
Okay. The short answer it does seem discriminatory in some respects. The flip side is you don't have to have a membership there, right?
No, but if you are a member, are you paying for the whole facility?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I mean, when you sign up for the membership, if you know that you're buying into this sort of structure, I'm not sure that makes it illegal. But it is interesting. I'd have to think that through because I'm not certain, but they may have a right to discriminate. They're going to validate it. They're going to validate it on the idea that a lot of women don't like to work out in a gymnasium where there's burly, strappy guys like me, throwing 500-pound weights around.
Yeah, well, there are no 500-pound weights in this place. The other room has 90% of the free weights. And the other big room, some of their argument is, well, the other room has the same stuff, so you're not being deprived of use of anything.
Separate but equal.
Huh?
Separate but equal. I've heard that before.
Yeah, how about Brown versus Board of Education?
Yeah.
Separate but equal is not equal.
Yeah, I understand. Tom, that's very interesting. You know what? I have no idea what the law shakes out on that. I guess the only thing you could do is go to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission and say you feel you're being discriminated against and see what they have to say. They're the best authorities on it that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, that's what I told the manager. I said, look, just quit while you're ahead here, and don't try to push this because we call human relations people. They'll be down here and they look around and they have them signs tore down in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, Tom, good luck with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 540-0580, or just get another club. That's always my theory on how to solve those kinds of problems. Michelle, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. I just had a question. I have a grandmother, a relative, and
Yes.
she lives in one of those apartments they rent from retiree homes, like age 55 or 65 and older.
Okay.
And she passed away. And she did not have a life insurance policy or any kind of estate. I've come to find out that when she passed away, they still required 2 months' rent because she didn't give 60 days written notice.
Okay.
And it was an unexpected death. How does a woman give 60-day written notice when she didn't know she was going to die?
Well, there is something that allows you to escape a contract,
Okay.
and it's called force majeure.
Oh, okay.
And that's like a force that's outside the control of the parties. And so one of the now sometimes a contract has a clause in it that says "too bad, so sad," but two thoughts. Number one is you certainly could invoke that doctrine and say, death overcame the contract because it's a force or a thing that's outside the control of the parties. Obviously, she wasn't planning or wanting to die.
No.
That said, if it's a state where there's no money in it, then who cares? Just let them go try to collect it from thin air.
Well, basically, that's what we basically said. Well, we said that how is she supposed to, and they said, well, it goes to the estate. And when I told them there's no estate, then I was told, well, then she had a security deposit, which what they're going to take.
Right.
And, which that's fine. I had a feeling that was going to go. And but still, the security deposit was only for 1 month's rent. And I think they're trying to go for 2 months' rent. So they're trying not to just get a security deposit. They want another month's rent on top of that.
Right.
They said that it takes us time to pre-qualify another resident to come in, and it's up to the estate. And I said, well, there's no estate, and you've got the security deposit, so what do you...
Right. And tell them to go pound sand at that point.
That's what I thought. I wanted to double-check, though. I had a feeling, but I wanted to ask just to make sure.
Yeah. No, that's what I would do. And, this happens quite a bit, so...
Yeah, I feel bad, but what do you do? There's no way to give notice.
I know. I mean, well, I guess if you're in Oregon and you're going to do the euthanasia idea or something, maybe you could. But other than that, you're absolutely correct.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Which, by the way, side note, I don't know if you remember, you ever watched the show Elf years ago with the puppet? Well, you might remember that everybody on his planet knew the day they were going to die. And so, of course, he was explaining one time that you had to have all your credit card accounts settled up.
Well, now I see why. It's just unbelievable, but I appreciate your help.
All right.
Thank you.
540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Answering your legal questions here. If you want to stop in on my Facebook page, you can see our exciting hunting adventure from this morning. I did shoot a goose, at least one anyhow. No deer yesterday, though. little federal court in the morning. It got appeared in the Patriot, and CBS, I think, picked it up as well. I had somebody go to jail for 4 years for a drug delivery resulting in a death, and it was really a tough case because it wasn't the drug delivery you would think of, and it's not the kind of case where somebody went out and bought drugs to sell drugs and all kinds of messy things going on. And, that's always unfortunate. People end up in a lot of trouble sometimes without really doing anything overt or without doing anything that would be considered normally dangerous, or where the victim or the alleged victim is as engrossed in the matter. I get a lot of these cases where you have young people in a car and they're speeding and there's an accident, somebody gets hurt or killed, and the parents are very upset with the driver, and you have a case where you have like 3 18-year-old kids in the car, and I always want to think like none of them were yelling slow down, and if any of them had been driving, it could have been them. And how do you sort out who's responsible? And so sometimes people just don't think far enough ahead on the consequences. But enough about that. 540-0580. Rick, you're on the air. Hey, Rick.
Oh, hello?
Yep.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I had a question. I was in an auto accident, and I was in a work vehicle, and I was at a red light. And another car hit another car that hit me. And, I hurt my neck, and I broke my tooth. And it's kind of confusing for me because it's not my work doing it through workers' comp, but I was off the clock, and I called a lawyer and talked to him, and it's really I'm really confused on how the process is working, how long things are going to take for me to get looked at, and
right.
My work's been really cool in covering most of the stuff, but who should I try and pursue, and what should I look out for? Because I talk to people all the time about lawyers and stuff, and what should I look out for, and
well.
I just don't know how to handle it.
You should always hire a lawyer that you're comfortable with, number one. Number two, you should price shop a little bit if you want. I'm not going to toot my own horn except to say that, I just had somebody hire me for a personal injury case where one of the factors that they were considering was the fact that the percentage we charge for a case that doesn't go to court is a little lower than what a lot of the big Harrisburg firms will charge you. So, you see the guys on the TV commercial and you go in there, well, they got to pay for those big TV commercials. And so they charge a higher percentage on a contingency fee case. And since lawyers are prohibited from advertising dollar values, I can't go out and tell you in an ad that, I charge X percent and the other guys charge a different percent. And here's what the comparison is, because they prohibit us from advertising price in the law, which is insane if you ask me, but that's just what the court has done. And so that's one reason why you should always talk to multiple lawyers if you're interested in a cost issue. And obviously in a personal injury case, whether it's 25% or 33% or 40% of or 50% of the award is a big difference when those numbers get up there.
Yeah.
Who you're going to pursue, you should always make sure your lawyer's cognizant of both the workers' compensation angles and the insurance issues. Because usually you want to pursue both if you can. Now, if you were at work but off duty, we have this whole concept of frolic and detour, and so we try to figure out, can we get to workers' comp, or will they say that you were, frolicking, meaning you were completely off. But here's the thing: if I send one of my attorneys to Lancaster, right, and he's driving back and he stops at the McDonald's on the way back for lunch, and he trips in the McDonald's parking lot, it's probably going to be compensable workers' compensation, because he's going to say, yeah, I had to eat lunch, and yeah, I ate lunch at the McDonald's, but I needed to eat lunch, and I had to eat it at that McDonald's between here and Lancaster because you sent me there, boss.
Yeah, and that's why I think to kind of stick with my situation, because I was already off the clock, and I work in my vehicle, so I was going home.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's the commute home, but you're in the company vehicle.
Yeah.
And so that may be our hook. So Rick, I guess the other thing, the bad news is whenever you're injured in a personal injury case, it takes a long time for these things to resolve because we have to wait till you're at your 100% medical improvement point.
Okay.
So I had a guy in my office one time wants to settle his case, and I'm looking at him and I'm saying, don't you think you should get that cast taken off first? Because maybe you don't have an arm underneath there anymore. I mean, I don't know, but we've got to wait until you're healed up so we know what your disability is.
Yeah, because
go ahead.
I don't want to take a settlement and then find out later on the road that I'm messed up.
Right, and they're going to assume if you try to take a settlement early, the other side's free to assume, I would say, and they would argue this is, we're figuring you're getting better. You're not waiting long enough, so we're not going to consider it as a permanent injury. Now, we sometimes have cases where we can settle them sooner, but I have a lot of folks who are literally starving to death waiting for their personal injury settlement because they can't work, they have big co-pays, and no income.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, I can't afford not to work.
Right.
And, like, I'm stuck between going back to work and letting this go or keep going. I just don't know what to do.
Well, Rick, if you want to talk to me more about it off the air, I'd be happy. You can get me through weekendappointment.com. We do a lot of personal injury work in my office. I think we do a pretty good job of it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care, brother.
Bye.
540-0580. Eleanor, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Carl. I have a finance question.
Okay.
I have a CD that has matured.
Okay.
And I'm 68 years old. I will be 68, and I was just wondering, should I just roll it over into another CD, or should I put it into something that I can maybe take money out of and use it if I need it?
Well, I don't know. And what I mean by that is depending on what your financial net worth is, et cetera. Now, if you came and asked me that question in my capacity as a lawyer, and you're in my office, what I would be talking about with you is you might want to figure out a way to make that money available to you.
Yes.
As a monthly, for instance, there's various kinds of annuities you could buy, which would allow you to take the money as monthly income. And what would happen then is, and again, as you get older, if you end up in a situation where you need some kind of nursing care or skilled nursing care, it becomes income instead of an asset. And so instead of having to exhaust it before you would qualify for Medicaid, for instance, or Medicare, you might be able to take it as income to supplement.
Right.
And that's a viable strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The fellow that I would put you in touch with is Mark Virginis, who you can find on weekendappointment.com, or if you contact me off the air, I can get his contact information for you. Because he's my financial guru that I refer people to if they have these kinds of questions.
Okay. Shall I call you at the 800 number?
Yeah.
When would I do that? Monday?
Yeah, and just let the girls know, or one of the guys they answer, that you're looking for Mark from the show's information. And if they're not sure, they're confused, you just tell them Carl said the guy that comes on the air with them, and they're going to come to me and go, well, why do you tell people to call us and ask us these crazy questions? And so I'll try to give them a heads up.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
All right,
Happy
Eleanor.
New Year.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Let's see here. Who's next? 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. I want to make sure you guys know we did open an office in Lancaster. We have an office in Chambersburg. We're available by appointment in Harrisburg. And so, if you haven't hired us in the past because you're all the way down in Lancaster and you thought, and I say all the way down because you're in Lancaster, you're like, no, you're all the way up there in Carlisle. Point is, if you didn't want to make that big drive, we now can meet with you down there. And we're regularly at the courthouse. I had business with the Lancaster County courts this week even. So we're always working in that area. We're up to 5 attorneys in the office. 5 attorneys, Shane? Does that sound right? Is there 5 of us now? There's 5 attorneys floating around the office. So we've got plenty of manpower. We can get things done for you. So don't be afraid. And like I say, I would let the guys who work for me represent me. So feel free to call the office. You go to weekendappointment.com and you can get in touch with us. And like I say, I'm happy to represent any of the listeners. And it's always nice to meet the people listening to the show. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out, you can still get a free will. If one more person calls me and asks me how much a will costs, I'm going to reach through the phone and strangle them, because I tell you guys every week you can get a free will at weekendappointment.com. So make sure you do that. Just go to weekendappointment.com, sign up, and get your free will. Julie, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. I love your show.
Thank you.
Registered through your site to try to get some answers, but I didn't see anything in the form that really addressed my concern.
Okay.
I have been divorced since 1988, filed in Cumberland County. My attorney was in Harrisburg. I went to Norfolk for many years.
Uh-huh.
And during that time, there was a flood in Harrisburg, and I understand all those records were lost in the attorney's office in the basement. Well, I work for the government, and OPM says that I can file a waiver to make sure that none of my retirement funds go to him if I meet certain criteria.
Right.
And my divorce decree filed in Cumberland County says there are no judgments against, my retirement. That's all it says. OPM rejected my claim, even though I met all the criteria for the waiver, saying that I had to get the paperwork from my attorney showing that there was no judgment.
Huh.
Why is that? And I don't know if I need to go seek assistance from a divorce attorney, from somebody who understands the federal retirement system benefits, or what to do. And I was seeking some information from your website on that, and I didn't see anything, and decided I'm free today and you're on, so
Here I am.
exactly.
I drove all the way back from Maryland this morning just so I could answer this question. And let me.
I appreciate
Not
it.
a problem. Let me tell you. Basically, what it's always a headache working with the retirements. Okay, and we've
You're
worked
exactly
with
right.
we've worked with federal retirements. We've worked with state retirements. We've done this for private employers, 401ks, yada yada. Here, the Teamsters retirements. Here's the general gist of how I handle this. Usually what I do is get in touch with them and find out is what magic thing is it that you think you need? Because the law, and I'm going to digress for 1 second, but I'll give you another example. When you have joint legal custody, the school districts, the doctors are supposed to share with both parents. But they'll always say, well, I don't see in the order where it says that. But the law says, the statutes say that if there's joint legal custody, then the parents have access to this stuff. So it doesn't need to be in the order. But for some reason, a lot of people want to see certain language, and other doctors' offices or other school districts don't like the language in one court's order. They want to see something different. Everybody thinks they have a magic solution. Well, so what we do with the retirements, the easiest thing to tell you what we do is go to them and say, what is the magic words that you need in a court order, or what are the magic things you're looking for? And if we can't produce what it is they want, then we go to the court and we say, hey, judge, I've got, fill in the blank pension plan, and they want the following magic language, and then they will accept this. And the only hassle about that is obviously we have to serve your ex. Of course, if we can't find your ex, we have a workaround for that as well. But and theoretically, they have a say in it. But if that divorce decree was entered without reserving property rights in the pension, then the court's not going to have any problem clarifying that. Now, if your attorney's records have been destroyed, that's a problem, but I don't know if those records would even help. Did you guys sign a marital settlement agreement of any sort?
We did a uncontested divorce in the state of Pennsylvania. We owned a home, so there was some property settlement. He was retired military, and I took none of his retirement.
And did you guys sign like a comprehensive agreement that said you get this, I take that? Or did you just kind of work it out and enter the divorce?
I have a settlement, and
Right.
I have a copy of that. And I'm not sure why they won't take that.
Yeah. See, it sounds to me like it just needs a little finesse. If you want to get in touch with me off the air, I'd be happy to help you out, write a couple letters and see if we can't figure it out.
Okay.
It's
and I can provide. I mean, I have all the.
Yeah, you have everything you need. I think
OPM sent me.
All I'm going to do is basically go to them and say, what is it you think you need? And if we can't produce what they think they need, then we'll figure out a way to have the court stamp off on the magic language that they need. And that's why I say these things are always going to turn out to be nicky-nacky. And here's the worst part about it. We have cases where this reminds me of having 3 building inspectors walk through the same building where everybody sees something different.
Correct.
You could literally send it back in 2 months later, and it goes on a different guy's desk, and they're like, this is fine. I don't see a problem with it. So I suspect you're running up against this only because there's no real reason not to process it for you.
And I agree. I'll tell you, the waiver said, I owe him no retirement no matter what. If he was remarried within 3 years of the divorce,
right?
If he was under the age of 57, which he was, I met all that criteria. I went to Cumberland County and I got a copy of his remarried certificate.
Mm-hmm.
I did all that stuff. Submitted it with this clear thing that, clear idea
Mm-hmm.
that there was no question that I met the criteria for the waiver, but they rejected it, saying, no, we need to see court papers to show there's no judgment. And when I look at my divorce decree, it says it's no judgment. So it
maybe
has to be.
And we could go back and forth here for a while, but all I can tell you is it sounds to me like, and what I suspect that you just find that this is a problem a lot of the times with the retirements, is they don't really know what they want. And so we make them spell it out for us, and then we give it to them. And then when they say that's not what they wanted, you say, well, look at your letter of August 6th. Oh, I guess that is all we needed. All right, Julie.
Okay, I will get in touch with your office then.
All right, you just go to weekendappointment.com to do that. Anybody else can too. Hey, you take care. I got to go to break here.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, hold on. We'll take you after the break, 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Whatever you want to know. Whatever you want to know about the law. Well, we don't know all about the law because it keeps changing. And, of course, there's so many areas these days. You know, people have school law, education law, bully law. Pet law seems to be a new big thing out there. You've got unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, taxation, personal injury, criminal, wills, estates, family law, business law, civil litigation. I mean, just endless variations in different things. And so you really want to have a lawyer who can identify what the problem is and not be afraid to refer you to a what we would call a specialist, which unfortunately lawyers are not allowed to advertise that they specialize in something or that they're experts in something. They usually have to say simply that they practice in that area. And, of course, you know, when the advertising guys roll around, they tell you just put everything in there because that way everybody will call you. So, you know, sit down, meet with your lawyer, talk with them, and make sure they seem knowledgeable and competent. And, of course, that might be tough to do sometimes because I know when I go to see my auto mechanic and he or she starts explaining to me everything they're going to do and why they're going to do it, I just sort of look at them and say, well, it makes sense to me. Jesse, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Good afternoon, Carl. Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
Actually calling in reference to somebody else that I'm trying to lead in the right direction here, but really don't know which way to point them in at this point. It's a young lady. She's 24 years old. She has young children. She's in college. And before the market crashes and everything of a couple of years ago, she had some credit cards. And then after the crashes, she became unemployed. And credit cards went into default. Credit card companies wrote these off. And about 6 months ago, one of these credit card companies filed judgment, went to and had a judgment against her. Well, it was another company that actually bought the account from them that did this, and she had set up payment arrangements with them. They never sent her any kind of paperwork as of yet that I know of, and so she hasn't made any kind of payments to them. And now the other credit card that we were discussing, somebody else bought that account also and is threatening to file judgment on that. And I'm just kind of wondering of what they can actually do to somebody who really has no assets or anything like that. What is their best course of action?
They can do very little to a person with no assets in Pennsylvania. Credit card companies. Okay. That said, they can levy against her, physical assets like a television set, other household goods. More importantly, down the road, these judgments are going to sit, accrue interest, and someday if she does become landed, wealthy, wins the lottery, or somehow starts to get ahead, these things will be sitting out there waiting for her, like bear traps. So usually we would figure out a way to get rid of them, and the best way known to man is a bankruptcy. That would clean up any debts she owes and any potential other ones that may crop up, and then put her on a clean slate going forward. The other option is simply to analyze the accounts and see if there's a way to resolve them and settle them out. But I suspect that these old accounts probably have substantial balances on them.
No. I believe they're under $5,000.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's not substantial to you, but I mean, that's still got a lot of money to lump out. So
yeah,
You know, every case is a little different, but the short answer is I would probably, off the top of my hat, say, go with a bankruptcy type direction. Otherwise, figure out how to satisfy them and get rid of them. And of course, if they're beyond the statute of limitations, she should be defending them and getting them dismissed.
Okay, what is the
4-year statute of limitations from the last time she made a payment or acknowledged the debt?
So there's 4 years. So even if they won a judgment, and it was 4 years prior.
Oh, well, if they have an old judgment, then that's different.
Well, no, there was a judgment that was done a couple months ago, but she didn't go because she didn't know, she didn't have money for a lawyer, and so she didn't go to it or anything like that.
Yeah, and statute of limitations is an affirmative defense, so she would have had to have asserted it. So by not asserting it, she may not be able to do that now. But it's never completely clear. She probably needs to figure out to get in with a lawyer. And actually, if she doesn't have a lot of money, the bankruptcy route's a really good way to go.
How long does that stay on your credit? I mean, if she go to...
Well, it's going to stay on her credit for quite a long time. But the reality is it's going to be a lot better than a bunch of unsatisfied old judgments sitting out there.
And that if you did file bankruptcy, that covers judgments also?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know they changed things, lately with credit cards, how they work. And she was just worried about getting into some kind of trouble.
Oh, yep. All right, my friend. I think that's what you need to do.
Yeah, yep. Well, not me, but...
Right.
Anyway.
All right. Get her to the podcast of the show.
I'll do that.
All right.
All right, thank you.
540-0580. That's right. You can get a podcast of the show. You go to WHP580.com or you go to weekendappointment.com. You can listen to the podcast of past shows. If you're really desperate or you need to put your dog to sleep, you just put that on and you'll like it. But seriously, she needs to consider a bankruptcy. That if you have these old judgments floating around or you've got judgments against you and there's more to come, and I always kind of chuckle when people go, well, what's the bankruptcy going to do to my credit? Well, ain't going to make it any worse than the stuff that's sitting there. And if you just leave it there, it ain't ever going to get any better. So you need to think that through. I did have somebody post on weekendappointment.com a question about an estate and some frustrations. They have a lawyer running an estate, seems to be racking up a big bill, no communication. I always tell people when that happens, it's time to go sit down with another lawyer and go over everything and find out what's going on. I'm just doing that for somebody recently where an estate's being run out of another county and they want to know what's going on. So we wrote some letters and we're figuring out exactly whether things are being administrated correctly or not. Sometimes people perceive things as not being done right or properly. Sometimes it's because as an heir to an estate, for instance, you are not the client of the estate, of the lawyer who represents the estate. And so they're somewhat restricted in some of the ways they can deal with you, or some lawyers take a very dim view of being friendly to the heirs for some reason unknown to me, and leads to this kinds of tension. So definitely if you're the heir to an estate and you're having problems with the estate, one thing you don't want to do is wait 4 or 5 years or 6 months or 8 months or however long it takes for the money to disappear and then wonder what happened. You should make sure you know you're kept up to date. But if you're not, see a lawyer of your own. I really think that's good advice. 540-0580. I'll see you guys after the break. That's right. I don't drive 55 because the speed limit's 65, Shane, and that way I can go 10 miles over. 540-0580. Myra.
Yes.
How are you?
Okay.
What's your
what
question?
I'm calling for is when you file a judgment for a residential lease and have your hearing.
Yes.
And usually within 10 or 11 days, then you file a judgment for the constable to come set the tenant out.
That's for judgment of possession. That's correct.
Okay. Now, if you do not file for the constable, how long is that judgment good for?
That's the tricky one. If you don't go to get the constable right away, theoretically, you still have judgment of possession, and you can do that. And off the top of my head, I don't know how long, if there's a hard end date for judgment of possession, but I can tell you a couple things that'll kill it really easily. For instance, accepting more rent money.
So you say do not accept more rent money?
Not if you really want to get them out. Because if you start accepting money, they're going to argue that you've reestablished the relationship. We've reconsummated the marriage, so to speak.
Okay.
On the other hand, if the only reason you were evicting them is because they owed you money, then they probably have a pay and stay eviction anyhow. And even if you got the constable involved, as long as they can pony up the money, they get to stay. So if that was the only reason to evict them was non-payment and it wasn't a lease term violation, then you should take the money because otherwise they can pay and stay anyhow.
Okay.
But long and short of it is, I would never wait past the 10 days. I mean, if you had to get to an eviction proceeding and the person still hasn't paid and a judgment possession was granted, you should go with the constable. If you're 15 days past the 10 days, I don't think you're going to have a problem. If you're 120 days past, I think you're going to run into some arguments that at that point, they may have been relying on the fact that you never executed your judgment of possession.
Right. Okay.
You got some tenants you got to get rid of?
Oh, yeah. Quite a few.
That's no fun.
You're right.
The good news, though, Myra, is once you get rid of them, you can try to replace them with better ones.
That's always a possibility, hopefully.
It's always the trick.
Right. Now, if you have two different constables in two different townships,
yep,
are they to have the same law as the other one? Are they both to have the same kind of law?
They should follow the same rules and do things the same. But, each person has different discretion how they do their job, and each of them may have been taught differently. So, I mean, they're independent actors, but they should be following the same rules of civil procedure and the same case law as it applies to constables.
Okay. So then you should really follow by the magistrate in your district.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Myra, take care.
Uh-huh.
540-0580. It's always better to go with the system than fight it if it's going to work for you. Nick, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl.
What's going on?
Not much. I just had a quick question. I bought a boat trailer a couple months back, and it was sold without a title, but I bought it because it was really cheap, and now I need a title. Is there anything I can do to get a title? So
you bought a trailer really cheap, but it has no title.
Right, so now I have a boat and a trailer, and I can't do anything with either.
Are there VIN numbers on them?
On the trailer, I don't know. I didn't really look it over that closely.
Okay. What we would do, if we can't find any numbers on them, there is a procedure for the creation of those numbers.
Okay.
There's forms you can fill out with PennDOT, although usually what we need to do is get a court order to create them.
Okay, and is this an expensive process?
It's not. It's not very expensive at all.
Okay.
If you want to get hold of Eric David in my office, I'm sure he could help you with that.
Okay, Eric David, you said?
Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, brother.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
All right. 540-0580. Joanne.
Yes. Hi. Is this Carl?
Yes.
Hi, Carl. I work for... Oh, I'm not... No, I won't do that. I work for a patient transport company, an ambulance company that runs non-emergency calls. And they have a new document that they want us all to sign, stating that if we damage any of the ambulances and it is negligent on our part, that we must pay for the part that needs to be replaced and $50 per hour for the mechanic to fix it. I had an incident in the past before this document was brought up about I damaged a tire. I wasn't told that money was coming out of my account. They took money out of my account. He never asked me what my story was, how did the tire get damaged or anything like that. Can he make you sign a document like that? I had another employee go upstairs and ask what happens if I don't sign it. And she was told that she would be terminated if she does not sign it. So she signed it as under distress.
Yeah. Well, the short answer is that's an interesting question. I can tell you, and I don't know the exact answer on the type of thing you're talking about because I have to research, but I can give you an analog to it, which is this. If I give you a do not compete to sign, okay, and you're already an employee, and it doesn't include something in exchange, then you're right. It's unfair because as an employee, you're coerced into signing something. And so the courts have said that if I give you a do not compete and I've already hired you, unless I give you a raise or something other substantial to go with it, then we deem it null because the idea is you signed it simply because you wanted to keep your job and no other reason whatsoever. At least from its face, we can't see any benefit to you in exchange for this new, quote, contract. So my thought on the matter would be you would be right. If you signed it and they try to enforce it later, you could certainly argue it's unenforceable. Now, since you're a work-at-will employee, I assume, just like everybody else in Pennsylvania for the most part, they can fire you anytime for any reason. And the firing you for failing to sign that would probably allow you to get workers' compensation, unemployment compensation. But nonetheless, if you signed it, I would assume it would be unenforceable. But I'm not 100% certain on that. I'm just analogizing it to the other body of law that I am familiar with, which is with do not compete.
Okay, and what exactly is do not compete?
A do not compete is a document that just says, you work for me and you're not allowed to go design websites at any other company in Carlisle, or you work for me and you can't go. Beauticians love these things. You can't go work at any other hair salon within 20 miles of Duncannon. Or else for 2 years. So that would be a classic do not compete. But if I've already hired you and I come to you with it, well, you're going to sign it because you have to.
Right.
All right?
All right. Well,
I don't know if that's a great answer, but I hope it helps a little.
Is there anything I can do about them charging me in the past for a tire without my consent?
Theoretically, it might be a Wage Act violation. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But, yeah, I mean, you may be able to go back and say you owed me wages and you shouldn't have taken that money out.
Right. Okay.
The flip side is you're probably going to lose your job then.
Yeah.
I mean,
so,
that's the practical.
I didn't argue it back then. So.
That's the practical advice. The other thing is fights, I mean, you should never leave money on the table, so to speak, but the farther in the past it is, the harder it is to sort out in the present.
Right.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Let's see. John. Oh, sorry, John. Next week. All right, guys. As always, a pleasure. Carl Rominger here. You need to get hold of me. You want to hire me. You want to use one of the lawyers in my office. We're happy to help you. We got offices in Lancaster, Chambersburg, Carlisle. We do a lot of personal injury work, some criminal defense, some business law. Just go to weekendappointment.com. You can also claim your free will there. I'll be back next Saturday to answer your legal questions. God bless.